We were accused of being anti-intellectual this week with our topic, but you know what? That's just not the case. The topic this week is 100% out of our brains, which makes it intellectual. We're going to be talking all about whether or not you're getting what you need out of your college degree and whether or not it's worth the investment you're making in it. So let's do this. We're the Libertarian Moms, and this is Parenting Porcupine. All right, Casey, Jessica, and Melissa this week. I know it looks like your mom and Melissa. And I threw my Dr. Casey in there this week because we were, in fact, accused with this particular title of being anti-intellectual, but that's just not the case. We're just talking about, are you really getting what you pay for? Is the college degree worth it? Is the return on investment actually there? And more importantly, because this is Parenting Porcupines, how do you talk to your kids about that? And so, Jessica, this is your jam. This is your topic. I'm going to step back and let you lead this and bounce this ball all around. You did a great job with the show notes. They're up on parentingporcupines.com. Go out there and follow along. And this is you, girl. Lead it. Let's do it.
Ooh, no pressure. No pressure. Casey usually does this because she's so much better at it than I am. So this topic comes from, there's been a lot of conversation, I think, lately about tradespeople and two-year degrees. Mike Rowe, who's a TV personality, most people know him from the show Dirty Jobs. He has actually been a huge advocate of two-year degrees, community colleges, trade and vocational training. And I think it's really important that we have this conversation because for a very long time, for decades, we have been pushing children to go to college out of high school. And in a lot of cases, not giving them the big picture of what all is available to them. And it's not just a 4-year degree, right? When I was in high school, we had a partnership with a local, it was called Bonds Career Training, I think it was called. I went to school in Greer, which is in South Carolina, where I live. But if you've watched earlier episodes, you know that. But you could actually, you would go through, I think they worked with guidance counselors to kind of figure out their path. But kids who kind of didn't really think they wanted to go to college, it didn't really feel like that was the right path for them, they could choose to, as part of their curriculum in, I think, junior and senior year, they could go to Bonds Career Center and they could start taking classes that would count toward getting their certification in a trade or some other vocation.
Yeah, we had that too. In Northern Virginia, Fairfax County, they had that too. It was vocational school, right? And so people who were into auto engineering or into beautician school, things that were going to require like business certification, some kind of trade certification. So yeah, we had that too. And I wonder about that being like a across the board, high schools have that. And like, but they were, do it.
Well, I was actually going to comment on that because when I was promoting this, my friend Michael, who's from Northern Virginia, he recently relocated to the low country of South Carolina, but he said, and this was actually the comment that he said, Fairfax County Public Schools in Northern Virginia gutted their trades programs in high schools across the entire county and left the only operating one in the neighborhood with the most minority students. It sent the message that it is all the minority and immigrant communities are good for. In the same breath, they also demonize and interrogate any student who does not have plans to go to college and encourage a culture of looking down on people in the trades as dumb, poor, and less than those who attend college. Fast forward 10 to 15 years, and these kids start having their own kids and pass on the culture of, you don't want to end up like a plumber because they're stupid. So, and that's actually part of one of the articles that I included in the show notes for tonight is that it becomes stigmatized because we're saying that, a 4-year degree is more valuable than becoming a master plumber. It's more valuable than becoming a welder or an auto mechanic. or an electrician, and that's not true. And we're doing a huge, huge disservice, not only to our kids, but our communities when we do that, when we create that stigma and perpetuate that stigma.
I work in manufacturing, and I'll tell you, especially in Connecticut where it's a lot of metal fabrication. If you know how to do it, none of our employees are under 50 years old. Finding people to replace the people that are retiring, we'll pay you $150,000 a year because we can't find anybody who knows what they're doing.
Yeah. You know what? So it's interesting that we say that about the United States right now, because one of the things that I learned about the Philippines was that the Philippines started training people. So they have this huge influx of opportunity with call center businesses in the Philippines. People who could speak English. That's all they had to do was be able to speak English, and they could be trained to be call center reps in the call center industry in the Philippines. So they were losing people out of nursing and engineering and policing and all these other like infrastructure jobs, things that help their community, because the easiest way to make money was to simply be able to speak English and become a call center employee. And so isn't that interesting that we're now sort of seeing the same thing, where in the United States, we're pushing people into college because that's the easiest thing to do after high school, is take this federal money, take this, these student loans, which we're going to get to in a minute, and go into college and wait for 4 more years before you start working. But really what it does is it robs us of these skilled employees. It robs us of the skilled laborers, to Jessica's point.
I got to say, because we have Boeing down here in the Low Country, and manufacturing's just gone insane since Boeing moved here. And it took a while, but finally the Trident Technical College has a course. They came to the aerospace manufacturers and said, what do you want people to know? And they developed a course that people can go to. To graduate the first section and be able to get a job in our shop is like 12 weeks.
Well, you're making a good point, though, because Melissa, if you think about the purpose of education as getting people jobs, which is the idea of the elementary school, middle school, high school education, is to prepare people for the workforce, right? And yet they're not, right? To Jessica's point, we're moving them towards college. We're preparing them for college, not preparing them to actually work.
Well, and I think what also very frequently gets lost in all of this is because, this generation, our parents and probably some of the older Gen X, there's not this alternative thought process of, well, maybe it doesn't have to be one or the other. Maybe I can talk to my child who is maybe not so interested in going to college. Maybe they don't have the grades to get the scholarship and they don't want to be ridiculously in debt when they come out of school and they aren't able to get a job. So maybe we will explore the option of going through a 2-year program, doing that coursework there. They can get a 2-year degree in a vocation or a trade, and then they can go to a 4-year college if they feel like they want to do that, and so maybe put them on that path too. So it's not just the option of you have to go to a 4-year, you have to learn a trade. Like, it can be both. And just the idea that nobody is talking about that, I think it's crazy.
Well, and I think, to your point, it's frustrating that parents aren't proud of their kids for taking that path, right? And saying, like, this is not, my kid is following his own path, and the path looks like this, right? And I'm super proud of him for doing that. I don't know if we're sort of hanging on to this pressure from our parents. And you guys know me. I want to blame the baby boomers for everything. And their concept of like success is a college degree, right? And so we then, as Gen X parents, go, well, then our kids must also have a college degree. Or are we able to say, like, my kid's charting his own path, and so perfect example. My friend Kevin has a degree. had a first wife, now a second wife, like has this corporate career, all this kind of thing. His brother dropped out of college, built a yurt. Do you even know what a yurt is? Because I didn't until he built it. He lives in a yurt in the mountains in up north of Asheville, and he's so happy. He like runs a rope course, and he's like super cool. He's all earthy, and like there's like one of those kids per generation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, not all of us can go live in a yurt and run a rope course, but everybody has to chart their own path. And I think it's not until we're late into our 30s or 40s that we start to value that. And maybe that's too late for some of our kids. Maybe before then, we've already sunk those devastating, you must go to college oats.
Yeah.
Well, all I know is I see people that have these degrees that have gone to college and they've got a degree in German polka history. And all I can think is you're $100,000 in debt. You have a degree. It's pretty on the wall, but it doesn't do any. What does it do? What does it get for you? What's your return on investment? And where were these children's parents when they were saying, this is what I'm going to go to college for? Someone should have tried to talk them out of this.
Well, it's funny. We were after we had our county Libertarian Party meeting on Saturday, and we went to do our Adopt a Highway. And after we went to lunch. And so we were talking, and we were actually talking about this very topic. And we were laughing because one of the guys that I was talking to made a joke about having a degree in, I think he said like gender studies or something, just really kind of off the wall that you hear it and you're like, what are you going to do with that? But it became a joke at the table. Like, yeah, I've got a degree in gender studies with a minor in virtue signaling. Like, so it was, but I want to say, Casey, because you made a comment that, maybe our parents did that to us. And so are we doing that to our kids? And one of the articles that I found, and I closed it out before I linked it in the notes, and I can't find it again, but it was actually setting out that maybe this Gen Z is going to be the generation that turns their back on the traditional college education, and that, they see the loan amounts and the debt that millennials have racked up, and they don't want that for themselves. And so they were saying in the article that it's an idea that Gen Z is going to be kind of,
I've got a lot of hope for Gen Z.
Me too.
I've seen a lot of articles that they are.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a coincidence that all of our kids are in Gen Z, but like I also have a lot of hope for Gen Z.
Yeah.
I don't think you're wrong about that, but back to like what Melissa was saying in terms of like, what are you going to do with that as far as the degree is concerned? Originally the college degree, it wasn't a vocational thing, right? Like you come out of college with a concept that you can think critically about things, that you understand things on a little bit more of an advanced level. Like that was the idea, was it you go to college to learn how to think. That's why it's like this bachelor's degree. You're supposed to be taught how to think, how to do this. It wasn't supposed to be related to your job. But then when employers start looking for, well, we're going to, how do we, filter through our candidates? We only want bachelor's degrees. I mean, the best example is Charlie working for Discount Tire Company, and he was a store manager. He was one of the only store managers that actually had a bachelor's degree. Most of them went into Discount Tire as tire techs, and they worked their way up through the store, and they became assistant managers, and then they became managers. And when they had or seniors and then managers, right? And what he knew was not any different from what everybody else knew. But Charlie went in and he started out as a third man. So he didn't start out as a tire tech. He started as a third man because he didn't have to be taught certain critical thinking skills. He didn't have to be taught. He was able to sort of jump over the initial how to interact with people thing because he had this bachelor's degree. And part of that was his age. Like part of that is you just get it because you're just a little bit older. But part of that too was spending 4 years figuring out how to bring in evidence, recognize what that evidence is telling me, and then do something with that evidence. So it was sort of a critical thinking assumption. You have a bachelor's degree, you must be better at this than other people are. But that was, and I'm like saying this caveat, that was 20 years ago. He came out of college 20 years ago, where people looked at, you have a bachelor's degree, you can think better than other people can, right? That's not true right now. Like, everybody's coming out of college now. And I mean, I'm teaching them in college right now. And I'm like, oh my God, think harder.
It's kind of scary. Yeah.
So I don't think it's an assumption. I don't think we can make the assumption anymore that a college degree equals a certain level of proficiency or a certain level of knowledge the way we used to in the past. And part of that is because of the inflation of what a college degree means. And really what ultimately becomes a deflation of what it actually is. I think the flip of that, and we've had this conversation multiple times, is the trade school degree, where you come out and you have this, it's a skill certificate. You can actually do this thing. Here's a thing you can do. That to me is much more transferable than the idea of a degree.
Yeah. And you can always too, and I think this is part of where we as parents come in, and we're probably going to elaborate a little bit more on this shortly. But, when you're talking to your children about these things, you talk to them about, okay, if you do this, what path are you going to take? And so if you're wanting to learn a trade, but you're wanting to work your way up to management, what does that look like? What company do you go work for? How do you decide what company you go work for? How do you decide what trade you want to have? That sort of thing. But I do want to go ahead and talk about the loan situation, because there's a lot going on in the news right now with our government wanting to erase student loans for people who have incurred student loans.
We're all girding ourselves for a real debate now. As Melissa and I are like, yeah, girl, let's do it.
Well, this is the heart of the problem. It wouldn't be such a problem if the government wasn't guaranteeing unlimited amounts of funds to 18-year-olds to pay for German Polka history degrees. And so colleges can charge whatever they want because the government will just loan people more money. And then we wonder why everybody's $100,000 in debt.
Well, you're exactly right. There's a bubble there. There's this inflation of what is education. What are they charging versus what are they actually worth, right? And that bubble is it's evident. The evidence of the bubble is the entrance into the market of for-profit universities. So when you see universities like Strayer, Capella, Virginia College, when for-profit entities come into the market, there must be some opportunity here. And that should have been a red flag. Like, we should have seen that, should have seen all of these for-profit colleges and said, whoa, something's wrong here. And instead it was like, make it rain. Like the federal government just kept securing loans. And the more they did that, the more the for-profits raised the price of tuition. Because if a college like Strayer is asking $26,000, right? Just putting that number out there, like, I don't even know how much they actually are. But if a for-profit university is asking $26,000 and the University of South Carolina, which is a real university, is asking 18, like, they can't compete with that. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're gonna, and so I think the market starts to fluctuate based on these new entries that came in. And when those for-profits came in, somebody looking at the market should have said, higher ed is in trouble. Like, we have to figure out what's happening in higher ed. And they didn't do that. And I know they didn't do that because I paid for a for-profit college for my PhD, and I paid way more than I should have. I will admit that. I got a very good degree. I worked very hard for it. But at the same time, it's not respected in traditional.
My college degree is from University of Phoenix.
So
because
you know,
because they
you
let me
feel
do it
me.
online in 2007, and that's what
That's why
I couldn't go to
exactly.
school. I had
That's
a
why I
full-time
did
job.
Capella. My
Yep.
PhD is from Capella University, and that's exactly why I did it. Is because
I paid
they
for
were
the
convenient.
convenience.
They allowed me to do it online. And now, like regular academia, traditional academia wants to be assholes about it. But the bottom line is we still have those degrees because we're still accredited, right? And ultimately, the federal government is who said that the price has to go up. Like they're the ones that were like throwing the money. Whoever wants a student loan can get a student loan. The for-profits raise the money. The old school did the same thing. The market went nuts. And what's left behind, and this is, I think, where Jessica's point comes in, like the reason we're having this conversation, what gets left behind is what are applicable skills? What can you actually get paid to do?
Yes, if I'm spending $100,000, I need a marketable, useful skill I can sell that will raise my income that much.
I'd better come out in high demand.
Yeah, there's got to be a return on investment because it's an investment at that cost.
Yeah.
And some of them did. I mean, you look at like ECPI with their like, what is it, 0 to bachelor's in 2.5 years. I mean, you can get a bachelor's degree at ECPI as fast as you need it. 2.5 years. I mean, these ideas that they're trying to meet the need of the consumer versus a regular university that didn't have to compete or they didn't think they had to compete. They weren't meeting the needs of the consumer.
Well, and so let's talk about what that looks like when the government forgives the debt or when college becomes free, right? Because that's what they ultimately would like to do. They would like for anybody to go to college and it be free. So
how good was your high school education? That was free.
Yeah, I was going to say, I have two problems with the free college. The first problem is we spend more time in high school than we should.
Yeah.
The fact that people are done with high school when they're 15, 16 years old, like they've learned everything they need by the time they're that age. Like, go, Melissa. Yeah, add to that. Because like, I think we're done.
Yep. Larry Sharp. He ran for governor of New York. Google it. Look at his page. He wanted to get the federal government completely out of New York state education. Tell them to take their money and hit the road. They don't want it. They don't care. Instead of doing K-12, do K-10, and then grades 11 and 12. You give those kids the $10,000 a year that would be spent to school them and let them pick a trade school, go to a college preparatory class, which would, magically appear for $10,000 a year. We will specifically get you ready for college to think like a college person. And I think that's an absolute brilliant plan.
I believe K-12 education is outdated. But I also believe the 9-month school year is outdated, that we should be talking about year-round school. Absolutely. And how do you very quickly get through this thing? The agricultural, whatever schedule we've had
the
for
time
so
change.
long. All right, Arizona, it's cool. Like, pipe down, Arizona. But I mean, these are the kinds of issues, like when we say we don't need K through 12, that like 11th grade chemistry teachers who are unionized lose their shit, right? And so like, this is, how do you get past that? How do you redo school altogether and go, oh, I just cussed and your kid's in the room.
Oh, she can't hear anything. I've got headphones on. Earmuffs. But I'm wearing them. Yeah.
Like 2 weeks ago, all of a sudden again. But yeah.
Oh,
so
I listened to that on my phone with my kids in the room sitting next to me. Listen to the whole thing about cussing. It's okay.
The other Casey's kid walked in as we were finishing up that conversation. He was like texting me. He's like, and now we're cussing in front of my kid. And I was like, it's, art imitating life.
I got my 10-year-old ask me, Mommy, which ones are the bad ones?
Jessica. I mean, she says it's your mom, but the truth is her name is Jessica and she's the bad one. You're the wicked bitch, right, Jessica? Oh no, he meant the words.
Yeah, which swears are the
Oh.
bad swears?
Oh,
I'm like the ones mommy
I
says when she's
misunderstood the
really
question.
mad. Those are the bad swears.
That's
But
so
I
funny.
misunderstood the
sorry.
question.
Yeah,
No, you're
school. We're talking about college.
fine.
Yeah, and and I think that another thing too that I mean it shouldn't have to be said, but when people talk about free anything, it's not free. Somebody has to pay for it, right? And so that money has to come from somewhere. I know. Because we all know where it
Yeah.
comes from, right? It comes from us. We pay for that.
Yeah, I'll
So,
agree with that. And as a university lecturer, I'm not a professor with a capital P. There's a whole thing related to that. We can have an offline conversation with just our patrons about that. But yeah, I absolutely have a problem with working for free. And I get paid to do what I do. And the university is the mechanism through which I get paid. Therefore, the university must get paid. And therefore, this is not free. If the university gets paid and then I get paid, that money has to come from somewhere. And more than likely, it's coming from taxes.
yeah. Yeah.
We have two comments I want to mention them real quick. Jessica Ashley and Michael Etheridge. Hey. Hi, guys. Thanks for saying hi. Thanks for leaving comments. We appreciate you watching live. I'm trying to do a better job of responding.
Yeah.
Michael, is that your man?
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
My man's probably like lurking on YouTube, but he's not actually responding to comments. All right.
They should have a thing in the comment section. It could be very entertaining.
Let's do this piece of of our show notes as far as the purpose of the higher education. Is the purpose of higher education to get a job? Meaning, should we
To me,
be
it is,
training
yes.
children for the workforce and creating little worker bees? Is that how it should be?
My son has told me he's 10. He does not want to go to college. He doesn't like school. He likes learning things, but he doesn't like school. Okay. I said, that's fine. You don't have to go to college, but how are you going to earn money?
Is he going to be a YouTuber?
That's what he wants to be.
All 10-year-olds want that.
It makes me
They
crazy.
do.
Yes, he thinks he can play video games and people are just going to throw money at him. Hopefully by the time he's 18, we will realize this is not what's going to happen. But I told him he doesn't have to go to college. He doesn't have to do any education after high school. If he can explain to me, how are you going to eat? I'm not taking care of you after that.
Yeah.
That's your problem.
Earn a
What are
living.
you going to do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
As long as he has a plan, I don't care what that plan is. If it's a reasonable, realistic plan, he can do whatever he wants. It's his life. But
Yeah.
So years ago, my older sister was teaching in a charter school in Chicago, and she said that most of her students wanted to be either professional athletes or rap stars. Like that was the only future they saw for themselves, right? And she was trying to help them understand that they could be all these other things. They could be teachers, they could be attorneys, they could be firemen, all these, a dentist, right? Like all these other things. There was so much more available to them and they just couldn't actually see that, right? And I wonder when we think about things like career day and all that, like, is it simply a matter of kids having kind of blinders, right? Like they don't know what their parents do. I mean, I have students that come into my entrepreneurship class, and when I say like profile an entrepreneur, they're like, my dad owns his own business. Hey, Dad, what do you do? And like, and then like the light bulb, and these are 22-year-old kids, right? Well, 20, right? And they've never noticed that their dad was putting food on the table by owning his own business. And whether that business is a car dealership or an HVAC, like it doesn't matter. Like they're still sort of awakening. At what point are individuals, not children, not teenagers, like at what point do we become aware of like the concept of having to earn money, having a trade? Like where does that become a thing? I mean, I don't know. I think in the old days, it was like immediate. Right? Like
Yeah.
you made the connection between food and money.
Most of our kids would be at work by now. So,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, I think that, 30, 40 years ago, a high school diploma was valuable, right? You graduated high school, you had a diploma that was valuable. You could go to work with a high school diploma, you could get a good job. Then college became the norm, the expectation, this rite of passage, if you will. And people started going to college to get a bachelor's degree. And so then that became the expectation. It's just like the base level expectation, right? Instead of the high school diploma. So in reality, where the bachelor's degree might have at one point been very valuable, now it's not so much. And so if we're not explaining that to our children and talking to them about what they're going to do with whatever degree, whatever certification they pursue after their basic education, then I think we're hurting them. Because really, there are plenty of people out there with bachelor's degrees who do very well, just like there are people out there with 2-year degrees who do very well. People who don't have any further education, they just got certifications. They do very well. That's not what I'm saying. But if you want to do well, like what people think of, being super successful, if you want to be a doctor or a lawyer or a dentist or
an engineer,
whatever it is, you have to go further, right? You have to get that next level, and probably even the next level, depending on what you decide to do. And so I think, that kind of feeds into, what are we doing to prepare our kids? How are we talking to our kids? Because I think a lot of this hinges on these conversations that we've had previously about accountability and personal responsibility, because we have to teach our kids to be responsible for themselves, right? And part of that is talking to them about these decisions that they're being expected to make. And I know that I personally, in my house, I've already started talking to my kids, even though they are 9 and 12. It's something that we're already talking about, because they do chores, they can earn money, they talk about wanting to get a job and that sort of thing. They're at that age where they understand having money and spending money, the value of $1, and how good it feels to spend on things you want, right?
I could go do with my friends.
Yes.
I need money.
And my elder son, his father is a plumber. And my brother does HVAC. He has since he was in high school. When he was in high school, he started working for, I was dating a guy. Yeah, I was dating a guy whose family had an HVAC company, and he went to work for them. So he got that on-the-job training while he was in high school. He came out of high school. He had a job. He's had a job ever since. But I have talked to my kids, and my husband and I both agree that we are going to encourage our sons when they are in high school and they really, start thinking about getting a job, instead of having them work in a restaurant or whatever else. We're going to help them find a job in a trade so they can go ahead and get some training, because that way, if the bottom falls out ever on them, they can find work, right? If they have those skills.
Now you sound like a doomsday prepper and an anarchist.
But
when there's nothing else for them to do. When there is no internet, there'll still be toilets. So
yes, exactly.
We replaced our water heater today.
Yeah. That's a fun project.
I'm with you 100%, Jessica. And coming from a position, like I said, and that's the whole reason my name got changed. And coming from somebody who spent a lot of money on a PhD program, who has a decent living from my PhD, there's a reason that I have that. It's all good. It's helping me out. But the reason that I even invested in it was the return on the investment. How much am I going to be able to make with this after I get it? Is it really going to be worth what I'm putting into it? And all the time we should be talking to our kids about, what do you want to do? And is what you're learning going to be helping you do that thing? Because if not, then you're not getting your return on your investment. And that is, that's not just education. That's everything we do. Are you spending your time watching YouTube because you're being entertained by it?
You only have so much time. Yeah, you invest it.
Exactly. And time is the one thing you can't get more of, right? You can manage yourself all day long, but you can't manage time because time is the same for absolutely everybody. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, it's the same. And what you do with it and how you choose to spend it is really the difference between whether or not you're going to be successful. And I don't necessarily think that putting it into a bachelor's degree or putting it into a trade school, one way or the other, it's always about whether you're going to get out of it what you need.
Yep.
But I think people need to be aware of that particular choice.
Yep. I am.
And what it's going to look like. I mean, and what the options are. And I think that's a discussion that a lot of parents aren't having with their kids is, you can do this, but at the end of this education, you're going to have this degree. What are you going to do with it? What do you want to do? Because if you want to be a plumber, why would you make your kid go to college?
But it's so hard at 18 to go, what do you want to do for the rest of your life?
Yeah, and some kids don't know. And I mean, I think that's another reason why, okay, let's get you enrolled in community college so you can take your base level classes and not rack up, 50 grand in debt. And you can get credits while you figure it out.
Yep.
Yeah, go Melissa.
I tell my kids, I'll admit, I don't need my degree. My degree is in business administration. My job has nothing to do with my degree. I work in a business. So I guess it's sort of relevant. Like I understand some concepts, but it's nothing I couldn't have learned on the job. I would know it anyways. So it took me a long time to finish and a lot of money, and it was not worth it. I would not have done it. So,
well, but
I'm coming at it from that. I don't want my degree.
That said, there are companies that are creating a barrier to entry. There are certain types of jobs where that bachelor's degree is a barrier to entry, where you can't do that job without a bachelor's degree. And so it's worth looking into what kind of job do you want to have? And do you need the degree to get there? And it is a lot easier if you've been in that education mode for 12 years to just march on and do that education mode.
Of course, I didn't have a plan.
Because coming back to college is really hard. Coming back to a advanced degree is really hard because it
only took me 10 years to get my bachelor's.
Yeah. And my brother's still working on his. I think he's been at it for 17 years. So yeah. I mean, it takes I
was gonna finish. Hell or high water. There's no stopping me. It became a matter of pride after a while. Like, screw this. I've got 2 classes. I'm gonna do it.
It is a matter of pride. There's a piece of that, right? Like when I fit my master's degree and my PhD were both that way, right? Like where it was like, well, yeah, I told everybody Holly was going to call me Dr. Mom. I paid a lot of money for this, and you'll call me Dr. Mom for the rest of our lives. All right, it's been 38 minutes. We're going to go ahead and end the episode on that, like, most pretentious way we can talk about education.
I mean, Dr. Casey.
Dr. Casey.
Dr. Casey.
Don't call her anything else.
I have a friend who's my other friend Casey, who used to call her herself. I'm Dr. Casey. She's not Dr. Casey. So I think just being a Casey is enough. But apparently, she needed to be like the not Dr. Casey. So anyway, this has been Parenting Porcupines. Thank you for those of you who've been here live this whole time. We appreciate you. Thank you for watching it in any capacity at all. Next week, something else equally entertaining. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Melissa. We'll see y'all soon.